to know about the condition of skin whiteness itself. The condition of skin whiteness is the genetic inability to produce skin pigment called melanin. This is a genetic recessive trait. It is a genetic deficiency state, not as defined by Francis Welsing, but defined by geneticists and dermatologists, that the inability to produce the skin pigment of melanin or melanin pigment is described as albinism. And I think that white people, even though most white people are not consciously understanding their problem in genetics, they are certainly aware that they are genetically dominated by people of color. That's why it was a statement, one drop of black blood makes you black, because people of color have the genetic capacity to annihilate white people. And so unless white people control the reproductivity of people of color, then we can postulate that perhaps one day there won't be any white people. And I think that the very survival of white people necessitates that they project genetic inferiority on people of color, because it is they who really are aware that they are genetic recessive and perhaps genetically inferior to people of color. And I am not saying this to call the condition of skin whiteness to say, well, no, white people are inferior. I'm not saying it for that purpose, but I think that it is of prime importance for the majority of people in the world to understand why it is that white people have to, the affected majority, large numbers of white people, have to move in a hostile and an aggressive way against people of color, and have to constantly focus on it's you who's genetically inferior, because they realize that there's something wrong with their genetic status. Now,
and you're author of a theory. Here's what she's saying. First of all, white people are dying out. Into the next century, everybody on Earth may be of color. And we're scared of it. Already we're a minority. Did you know that? I'll guess 25% of us are white, maybe less than that. And that's the reason we're racist. We're not only afraid of dying out, but we're also jealous because we have no color. You're laughing. How come we spend so much time in the sun trying to get brown? Can't make a baby of color. And that's the reason for racism and lynching. And if we don't get... How do you explain? You believe we're racist? No, we're not racist. Yes, we are racist. What is this, an accident that all the cities are becoming blacker and blacker while the outer reaches of major metropolitan whiter and whiter? That's an accident? Fuck. When you get on an elevator and you're the only white person on the elevator, how do you feel? Francis Cress Welsing, M.D. You are a Washington, D.C.-based psychiatrist, and you're author of the Cress, your middle name, you should say, Theory of Color Confrontation and Racism. You call racism white supremacy. To be sure, a provocative and controversial theory on skin color and oppression. Well, I'm ready. So is this mostly but not exclusively white audience. Let them have it, Doctor. What's the
question? Why? Why do we see this behavior? Why have we seen it for hundreds of years? So I've thought about these two things, basically two facts. That even though the white population says that people of color are minorities, that it is the white population that is the minority on the planet.
That's the reality.
That's the reality.
Yeah.
That in spite of the fact that black people, non-white people have heard over and over again, you're genetically inferior because you are non-white. That in reality, white skin is a genetic recessive status, not as said by Francis Welsing. Meaning that if you and I were to have a baby, the baby would have color, and you make the contribution and I don't. That white plus colored, well, wait a minute. It's not Francis Welsing that is concerned about the disappearance of white. Ben Wattenberg just wrote a book, The Birth Dearth. There have been multiple articles in the newspaper talking about the decline of Western populations.
Yeah, here's the Washington Post, just to name one. We are a depopulation bomb, the withering of the Western world. Here, incidentally, this was the percentage of the West's population in 1900, the turn of this century. About 30%. This is where we'll be less than 10% in the year 2075. Here's where we are about today, 15. So we're not having babies.
So whites are not having babies, and there is the concern about white genetic annihilation. In other words, I look at, this is Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday holiday, and people will say, well, here's a man who talked about love. Why was he killed? And I say that the deeper logic is, what if all black and white people and non-white people and white people love? What would happen to white people? White would disappear. You see, just mix all of the people on the planet up together.
If race didn't matter, or color didn't matter, it follows with the jet plane.
No, I'm not saying if it didn't matter. I'm saying that indeed if there was a mingling of all of the people, because
That's what I'm saying.
okay, fine.
Absence of prejudice.
The ability, no, wait, don't confuse what I'm saying. I'm saying that if we mixed all of the people presently on the planet, stirred them up,
the white freckle-faced people would be gone.
Genetic recessive status would disappear. And that if I did a survey and everybody didn't have to, face anybody, if I said how many people who are white want their children to be white, want their grandchildren to be white, want their great-grandchildren to be white, want their great-great-grandchildren to be white. And I've gone all over the country in England and asked this question. Yeah. Everybody wants the children and the generations to remain white. Yeah. If you do, then you have to do something to make sure that that happens. And I say that what the thing is that is done, and particularly in relationship to black non-whites, because we have the greatest genetic potential to cause white genetic annihilation.
Because you're the blacks.
Because we, right.
The most color.
Right. We have this ability to produce melanin pigment. We have more of it than anybody else. And so the most pressure is on black people. As a matter of fact, the black people learn, all non-white people over the world learn. If you're black, stay back. If you're yellow, you're brown, stick around. If you're yellow, mellow, white, right. I can go to England and the people can just say the same thing. Doesn't matter whether if you go to the Philippines. Because there has been a confrontation of brown with white. Everybody knows the more pigment you have, the more pressure that is on you. Yeah. But they didn't understand why. I said the why is for the purpose of white genetic survival.
Right.